if something's out of whack in the spiritual body and we don't address it, it will end up probably manifesting in the physical body, and vice versa. Then I felt bad because I'm talking to God, and I'm talking like a foul mouth rancher girl.
Hi there, my name's Antoinette Olo, and welcome to an episode of She Owns Success, the podcast. I'm so pleased to be back with another episode after what has been a very, very long hiatus, but so pleased to be back. And in this episode, I'm talking to Hertha Lund. Hertha has got an incredible story, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you, starting with experiencing extreme childhood trauma, leading to complex PTSD, and then having an NDE of all things, which really, as you can well imagine, has gone on to change the course of Hertha's life. She is now the founder of 4 Horses for Wholeness, where she works with people and helps them to work through their own trauma, their own recovery through Equine Gestalt Coaching. Hertha has a new book coming out on the 15th of July, and it's called Alchemy of Resilience, My Rugged Path to Wholeness. That's Alchemy of Resilience, My Rugged Path to Wholeness. So definitely go out and grab yourself a copy. But for now, let's get into the episode, and I hope you enjoy. I am super excited for this conversation. So firstly, thank you so much for agreeing to share your experience and your story with She Owns Success. And let's kind of get into your journey, because it's really interesting. And I'm really excited to share the insights and everything that you've learned along the way.
Well, it's so good to be here with you. It's morning in Montana and afternoon in where you're at. So I just feel so honored, and my heart is full already to be here with you today.
Fantastic. So I guess in a nutshell, today you are a speaker, you're an author, you're the founder of 4 Horses for Wholeness. But the thing is, you've had quite the journey. So let's start kind of at the beginning. What were you doing before today? Because it's quite different to what you're doing now. When we get into that, I think the kind of listeners will see that it is very, very different.
Yeah, so I think I'll just back it up to being born on a ranch in Montana. And so where I was born is very rural in Montana. And I actually went to a 1-room schoolhouse that didn't have indoor plumbing.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so growing up there, we had many acres, and like you took 30 acres for a cow. I don't even know how to translate that into the metric system, but it's a lot. And all my childhood, I started riding when I was 4 or 5 because I loved horses and I was adventurous. It also got me out of the house. So I had trauma from my mom, and I wanted to get away from her as much as possible because I didn't know where she would be or what would be going on with her. Mm-hmm. And so I would go out riding with my dad on the ranch. And sometimes I'd get on at sun up and be out, and I could actually learn how to take a nap while I was riding.
No way.
Yes. Yeah. Anyhow, I lived on the ranches, and we moved to another ranch, and sometimes we ran as many as several thousand head of cows. Mm-hmm. And but for me, my getaway was to be with horses outside. And very early on, while I was outside with horses, I started talking to God. In fact, I thought being with horses and talking to God were synonymous. So I didn't learn about a spiritual path from the outside. It came from the inside. Mm-hmm. And I literally experienced heaven and hell while I grew up in the rough breaks of Montana, which is really what the countryside is called, because Mother Nature is so rugged there. In Montana, they call it the Big Sky State. And they say, why they call it the Big Sky State? I'm like, well, you haven't been there yet, because when you look, the sky is wider across the horizon and goes up higher. I mean, it's just an amazing vista. And in the summer times, it's a blue sky. I call it the bluebird sky. Lovely. And so you have this big, beautiful sky, but the earth where I was raised is called the breaks because it's been worn by the water. There's a big river nearby. And so it goes cut deep divots in the country, the hillside going down. Mm-hmm. So there's places you can see to the other side, but you can't really necessarily ride a horse across there because it's just so rough. And then there's sagebrush and rattlesnakes. So it's literally every day going outside is kind of an adventure just to make sure you stay safe. So that's where I started.
Fantastic. So on from there, you actually
at one point you probably still are actually, but you're the CEO of your own law firm. So I guess just to give people a bit of a kind of contrast and comparison, you talked about loving horses, and today you are a Gestalt facilitator and coach, but you came from this journey being the CEO of your own law firm. So tell us a little bit about, what happened? How did you kind of transition from what seems to be a completely different pathway to something?
Yes.
To what you're doing now.
Just a little bit of more background is we lost our ranch when I was in college, and I was studying pre-vet, pre-med to be a doctor, and I played 2 varsity sports in college, basketball and rodeo. But I had to become a horseshoer and a blacksmith, and I had to have to work to put myself through school. So I worked very hard. During the day, I would be a blacksmith or a horseshoer, and at night, I'd bartend or be the night janitor. So I was making money to go to school, and I was about ready to apply to vet school or med school. And I took time off and managed a ranch. While I was managing the ranch, I started writing about current issues, and people said, you should be a writer. So I packed up my self and moved to the East Coast. And so at that time, since we had lost everything for the ranch, I didn't have any horses. And literally everything I owned, I don't even think when I first moved, I had a car. I mean, I was down to almost nothing. Wow. And I went to journalism school at Temple. And I decided that I should go to school on the East Coast because it was people from the East Coast who were trying to tell us how to think and live in Montana. And to me, that seemed a little bit short-sighted. And so I thought, but I'm going to be equally as ignorant if I try to talk to people and I don't know, I haven't walked in their shoes. I haven't felt and been in their life, experienced it. So I went to journalism school, got a degree in that. And then after journalism school, I worked as a writer. And within a year or two, I was picked up as a assistant editor of the American Farm Bureau News. So I covered Congress and the United States Supreme Court as a journalist. And I did that for 3 years. And I was prompted in my heart. I was watching, covering a Supreme Court case, writing about it. And I was like, I don't want to write about it. I want to do it. And so I went back to Montana and went to law school. And then after law school, I went back to DC and clerked for the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Federal Claims. And since then, I've been an attorney for 30 years, and I've had my own law practice since 2010. So, and we're a kind of a boutique firm, which means we have a niche, and our niche is property and water rights and litigation. And so that does seem very different from my coaching and what I've written about in my book. So
I love that. But already, I mean, even the kind of journey to the litigation, that's been quite different, hasn't it? From journalism through litigation. How was that transition? And do you feel that kind of what were some of the things that you learned? And do you feel that you're quite happy that you went down the route of the journalism?
The journalism helped pull out the writer in me, right, and the observer. And as a litigator, I'm fairly high on the introverted chart, but I love competition and I love a challenge. And so in the courtroom, I'm like at the height of all of because it is competition, it's public speaking, but the jury is watching and they connect with who they trust. And so to me, and it's strategy, it's playing chess, not checkers. There's lots of things happening, but it all has to take place within a very calm composure. And in some ways, I would say that writing for persuasion or being a lawyer is more like shaping shoes. I was a blacksmith.
Right.
To shape shoes, you got to know how hot to heat it, where to heat it, where to hit it, how hot to hit it. There's all these things about shaping it and molding it into what you want it to be. So I think that what happens with persuasive writing or speaking or even being a litigation attorney is really being able to read the room, read the facts, understand the witnesses, the evidence, and present it in such a way that it makes sense to the people, the decision maker, whether it's the judge or the jury.
I love that. Who would have thought we'd be sitting here comparing litigation to being a blacksmith?
It makes perfect sense to me, but it's because of my lived experience. And I really do believe that way we learn the best is by lived experience. So,
of which you've had quite a significant lived experience, which we will definitely go on to talk about. And I'm super excited to share this. We haven't had any interviews talking about anything like this previously, but I think it's just what you've gone through is absolutely kind of fascinating and powerful, and I guess it will enlighten everybody as to kind of how you've probably ended up doing what you're doing today. So I guess to continue on, so obviously, as you said, you've got your boutique firm, which you are still running. You've been running that for 30 years. So what actually happened then? How did kind of the Gestalt piece? I know you said you're very passionate about horses, and clearly horses have been somewhat of a comfort and a therapy and something that's kind of been important in your life, as you said, since you were a child. But kind of how did it transition from the litigation piece from the Supreme Court to now?
Yes, that's a very interesting journey as well. And so I had complex PTSD from my mom and from childhood sexual abuse. So my mom had many good qualities of being a ranch wife, but being a mother was not one of them. And early on, she had her own trauma that she didn't work out. And in those days in Montana, there weren't very many resources. And so she chose to use alcohol. And I was her oldest daughter. And, I think whatever we don't work out in ourselves, we tend to project onto, whomever. And I think if we're a mother, we'll project it onto the oldest girl. And that's what she did anyhow. And so I had that trauma, and I really did have to be careful at times because she could be dangerous. When she choked me, she realized what she was doing and she dropped me so she didn't kill me. So she had enough sense to slow down and stop. But it was dangerous at times. And then the childhood sexual abuse was also at 5. So both of those traumas, I chose to armor up. I got tough, and I was not going to ever let anybody hurt my heart again. And so my go-to move, I didn't end up being an alcoholic. I was wired for that because of my mom and my own psychology. But I found because of my spiritual beliefs, drinking just didn't mix with that. And I chose the spiritual side to go down that road instead of falling into alcoholism. But, I had lots of messy stuff going on inside of me, but I chose to put all my effort into succeeding. And when I was doing that, then I was moving too fast and I didn't allow myself to slow down to feel. So they talk about the body remembers, the body speaks first, all this stuff that we're learning now that goes back to Peter Levine and Dr. Vessel Bender. I can't say his name right. Anyhow, they've written about this, and for me, I just stuffed all that pain into my body. So now I'm a lawyer. Guess what? Being a lawyer matches perfect for somebody to excel, never slow down to feel, and to be tough. So I'd married up my inner life with my outer life. And I did that for many years. And another interesting thing is when I took the bar exam was the first time I experienced chronic pain. So I would have been in my early 30s. I went to law school later, so it was like a second career.
Right. And
while I was sitting there doing the bar exam, I started having chronic pain, and I had severe endometriosis. And then I just built on to where I had fibromyalgia, I had low back pain, I had migraines, I had all these conditions that caused severe pain. And I would just have to, and I'm horrified of not being able to pay my bills because we lost our ranch. So I have this trauma that's just all around me in my inner world and seemingly in my outer world. But I just keep on keeping on, hold it together, tough. And 10 years ago, I started having heart pain around my heart. And it went on for a year. It just kept on getting worse. And at one point it was so bad, it hurt so bad that I had to call the ambulance, take the aspirin and sit in the chair by the door. Wow. And the ambulance came and they couldn't even get a line in because I was so shut down in shock. And it was basically from the pain. They took me in and gave me a heart workup. And it was pericarditis. So they now diagnosed, which is inflammation in the sac around the heart. But mine had been going on for the year and it just kept on getting worse and worse. After that, they didn't know how to treat it and they didn't know what caused it. So it just, they kind of sent me home and said, check in, it just got worse and worse. And pretty soon I'm hospitalized for a couple days. And then I'm in for 6 days and 5 nights or something. And I'm not in the regular floor. There's a floor in between ICU, intensive care, and the regular floor, and I'm there. And around me are the people who've had heart surgery. And, I was on a floor where there was a lot of sick, really sick people. And at night, some of them would code and die. And I could see that across the hall. And I was talking to God, and I'm like, well, I could die. And it's like, well, yes, you could. And I'm like, well, I don't really like it here. It's been I usually say, shit show. Is that okay for your podcast? Okay. And then I felt bad because I'm talking to God, and I'm talking like a foul mouth rancher girl. But I'm like that, I just stayed with it and talked. And I'm like, I haven't, it's been a hard place here. You obviously sent me to the wrong place. I mean, I always wanted to go home to God.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling into that. And then I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, I love my husband. And I felt into it. I'm like, he loves me too very much. We have a good relationship. And I thought he would miss me, but he would be able to get over it. I thought about my dogs and my horses and everything I loved. I thought about God. And then I had to kind of chuckle, literally, because I'm like, it's true. I'm dying. I'm about to leave my body. And I am not thinking about success, my lawsuits, the money I've made, the things I've won, the saddles I've won, whatever this or that. None of that was in my mind. All I thought about is who and what I loved. And all of a sudden, I just went up, 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 and this white and gold shimmery light. And, this tube of light was bigger than the universe. I mean, when we're out of our bodies in that consciousness, there is no time or space. And so I won with this light. Somebody asked me, did you see God? And I'm like, no. God was inside of me. I mean, I was one with the light, and it just took me up and up and up. But I felt like a little 4-year-old running to my heavenly parents' lap, free, joy, totally worthy. And then I'm like, I'm going to see. I felt like I had a mentor, a being that up there who helped take care of my soul,
Right.
was part of my, teacher. And I'm like, it was a him, and I'm going to see him. But I'm like, I'm not done. I suddenly realized I had a reason for coming to earth and being in this body, and I hadn't done it yet. And so I went really deep in my gut, in my being, and I thought I only had a nanosecond. So I decided, I said, I'll do whatever it takes to heal and get in my body. And as soon as I did that, I just fell out of the sky, right back into my body. And it was horrible because my body was so sick, from going from that high consciousness and then getting in my sick, heavy body. And when I give talks, I say it was like I was crawling into a dead elk carcass laying on the interstate. It was pretty bad. So I was given the gift of coming back. I was not given the gift of instantaneous healing.
Right. Which is a double-edged sword, isn't it? I think that's the thing when we think about that experience that you've had. I think a lot of people who are on the spiritual path, who want to have some kind of spiritual experience or awakening, they would think, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. But as you're saying, you didn't just come back and you're healed. You now have come, it's almost like a gift and a curse, isn't it? Because you've experienced this fantastic, loving, wonderful, freeing. And of course, this is all kind of got the backdrop of the life that you've lived. As you said, you've had quite a challenging time. So what happened after that? Talk us through that, because I can't honestly imagine having the experiences that you've had, having the challenges that you've gone through, with your family, with your mum. As you said, you pushed everything down, and we'll kind of go into that later on when you talk about the work that you do, how obviously these things can and do impact us. But then now you've then been away from it, you're free, and here you are back again.
Yeah.
So then what?
Getting ready to do the work. And my number one value is integrity, integration. And so when I promised God, that really was true north to me. And so I've been very earnest in following that. And the first thing I realized, I had this prompting. And I think we can have an internal voice and connection in all of us. It's just whether or not we hear it, recognize it, and hear it. And so I became very serious about following what was the internal ongoing conversation with God. And the first thing I got was I had to learn how to sleep. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
I'll work on it. And I hadn't slept for years because of the pain.
Right.
And my knowing was that my body and my being couldn't heal unless I could sleep. And so at first I even took prescription meds only for a short time, but I needed to change the cycle and start a foundation of getting rest. And so I did sleep hygiene. I did multiple different things, everything I could. I looked into it, and anything that came to me. And it took me about 2.5 years. But one morning I woke up and I thumped my chest and I told my husband, I said, I'm a championship sleeper. And he says, yes, you are. So that's still very important in my life to this day. I make sure I get enough sleep. And I think it's fundamental for all of us and foundational. And so that was number one. And then I did regular medicine. Note, I leave the hospital, but I'm still sick. I didn't think I went back to work. I worked from home some, but God only knows how I did it because I had been so sick. My CRP, which is a measurement of inflammation systemic in your body, was 197. Doctors get nervous if it's 7.
Crikey.
Oh yeah, I was off the charts with systemic inflammation. And so it took time for my body to heal, to get that back. And I did acupuncture. I did worked with the naturopath. So I did herbs and homeopathy. I did somatic experiencing to help get the pain out of my body. I did counseling, and I did some with I went to several, not at the same time, but different counselors. And what I learned is that when I first got so sick, I was thinking about going to the Mayo Clinic, which is a really fancy clinic in America. And but then my friend who's a doctor said, they're going to run all the same tests and it's going to cost you all that money. Yeah. And so I thought, okay. And I trusted that my relationship with God would lead me. And I found everything I needed in the town that is closest to me, the people I needed, or I did some remote, some counseling with remote people. So what that told me is that when we decide that we're going to heal, no matter what, and we're going to stick with it, I committed. And I took the steps. I just didn't decide. I acted each day. Then we will attract to us what we need to heal. The other thing it was like is I had spent my health bank account. I was as close to bankrupt and keeping a body as you can be. And so it's like if we have to borrow money to buy a house or something, something big, it takes a long time to make any payments towards principal. We're just paying interest. Yeah. And that's what it was like for my health for the first few years. Part of me would get kind of not disgusted or disappointed because when will this ever end? I'm just been so sick and I'll never feel good. And I'm just, and it probably took till 3 or 4 years somewhere in there. And it started to turn. And I started to feel healthier and more light in my body. And now I would say it's turned the other way. I still have more work to do. I think we do as long as we have a body. But now the momentum of health inside me carries me forward. What I learned is that the energy of healing and health started carrying me. I was in the flow. And so instead of trying to make it happen and find it, it became the guiding principle and direction. Now I just helped move cows 4 days ago. I think it is 4 or 5 days ago. I'm married to a rancher, and I helped him make this move for 17 years. And it's before when I used to do it. Now, remember, that was I started before I died. I'm still tough, but I had to take painkillers to get by with the pain on a daily, and especially for that ride, because being on a horse would cause my body to hurt. And so I'm doing this ride 4 or 5 days ago, and I'm like, okay, when's it going to hurt? Because my body remembers that. It remembers how much it hurt. Yes. And I'm waiting, and it never happened. So here I am, that much older than I was when I used to do the ride, 17 years of it. And I felt the best now, and I'm in my early 60s, than I did when I was in my late 40s. So I not only got back to baseline, I dug myself out of the hole, and I gained back a way of being healthy in my body that I maybe never had in my life because of not dealing with the pain. One last thing, I think the pain causes, when we don't have, we have unprocessed pain, it causes tangles in our energy system that then, tangles in our body.
Mm-hmm.
So that is what kind of blocks the health and the movement of health, light, and love, kind of, that I think is naturally meant to move through us.
Wowza, thank you so much for kind of that detail. I mean, where do I begin? This is definitely a conversation about healing. Obviously, you had a lot of healing to do. You had a lot that had gone on that, as you said, was kind of unprocessed and was pushed down, which this is such a powerful conversation because I feel that so many of us are living like that. And it clearly manifested in this pain, which you kind of continued to live with and took these painkillers. And I think we've kind of talked about before we've had this call, how that's what people do, isn't it? You kind of just take things and keep pushing along. But then obviously something higher decided that it was time that actually all of that stopped.
Yes.
So I guess from your perspective then, talk about this healing journey, because one of the things you mentioned was you firstly had to learn to sleep, which I'm very interested in because so many people struggle with sleep. And it's kind of, what did you do? How did that look? I know you mentioned a few different things. What things did you find were the most kind of successful for you? Or what would you suggest for people who are struggling in that regard as a kind of baseline or way to start? And then secondly, you talked about learning to listen to yourself and being guided, it sounds like, rather than kind of doing what you thought you should do or going to the Mayo Clinic or whatever it might be. It sounds like you very much were able to listen and the answers kind of came to you, or the guidance or the help that you needed was kind of put in your path. How did that look? How does that listening look?
Those two are actually, the two questions are actually inextricably intertwined.
Right.
And so to learn to sleep, everything that we do in life creates habits. So we usually think of habits, I eat with my right hand, I eat with my left hand. Those are habits. But we also have habits in how we think, how we feel, how we experience life. And so we have physiological habits, biological habits. So when I hadn't slept, for probably 40 years, that meant that I had all those rings. It's like you can think about rings around a wire around a magnet or something.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets stronger and stronger. So it doesn't take 40 years to unwind it, but it does take a daily practice. And so that's how everything about healing, what I found, is a daily practice.
Yes.
I have to do the outer step to do things. I did take supplements, but there was no one outside fix.
Mm-hmm.
When I was doing the inside work, I could find the outside support for the inside shift. So there was a time where, since I was so out of touch with myself, I did take prescription meds to sleep. I did not like those because they come at a cost. I lost parts of myself with what they affected. But for the short term, I needed to do that because I needed to just get a baseline of slowing down and resting so I could heal. Mm-hmm. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we can feel how something is working inside of us. I think what a lot of us really want, we don't want to accept the responsibility to heal ourselves. Right. I wanted, until I died and came back, I wanted somebody else to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, doctor. And when I was in the hospital, I had good doctors, but they couldn't figure it out. Right. And they would actually, all of them would have a meeting in my room, because even though I was in such pain, I still had complicated records, but I could still talk about it intelligently, and I could be part of the team of helping them figure things out. But as I look at them, I'm like, wow, I have the best doctors. There's nothing wrong with my doctors, but they can't fix this. It's up to me to fix it. And so I think that's one thing that's hardest for us to understand, is to take responsibility for ourselves. And I don't think there's really any true healing that doesn't come from that perspective. I mean, even if somebody were a gifted spiritual healer, or let's even talk about, Jesus Christ. He healed people, but he didn't heal everyone. I think healing only comes when we're in the right place and we've got the inner part that matches the outer part. And then what comes to us in the outer could be exactly the right healing. And it could come through an MD doctor, it could come from an ND, it could come from a psychologist, it could come from a horse. It will it bring to us what we need to heal when we're actually slowed down, being honest with ourselves. And note that slowing down means that's also what it takes to sleep. That's also what it takes to hear the voice, the message from our connection to the divine. Regardless of whatever our religion is, we can each have that. And I think we're meant to have it, but we're not taught it in the outer world. So
Definitely not. And I guess to kind of go on from that point you've just made about hearing that message from the divine, how has that changed for you, or if at all, since coming back? How has that evolved for you?
I used to just sometimes hear the still small voice. It's a still small voice, but it's a very clear voice. But it doesn't shout, and it's not like a Goodyear blimp.
Yeah.
But now I have an ongoing conversation. Mm-hmm. So just like I wouldn't sit here and read my phone while you and I were talking, I'm focusing and really engaged with you. When I have a conversation with the divine, I try to hold myself also there. I mean, it's so much easier to say, oh, I'm praying, and then think, oh, I got to do this. It's like, well, come back here. I wouldn't treat my best friend this way. And this is in essence, all of our best friend. And so I just kind of maintain keeping myself pulled back and present and in a loving conversation. I think also it's hard to love something that in love to all of us is kind of nebulous, on and off. And we think it's just an emotion, or it's a surge of feelings. But love is so much more than that. And I sometimes inform my prayer life, but I do have a devotional practice every morning. And I've done that fairly steady for 40 years. So that's a practice, but I still need to practice. I mean, there are days when I don't want to sit there. I want to flit around, either physically or mentally or emotionally, some way. But in that practice, I sometimes remember the greatest thing I ever loved and how it felt to be in that presence. And then I feel that, and then I have the conversation, the devotional practice, or the conversation. And my body doesn't know the difference. Just like when I have post-traumatic stress disorder, mm-hmm. when I get triggered, it thinks that the danger is here. Well, it's also true when I feel into the greatest love I've ever had or felt, or sense of oneness, or when I tell the story about being in the tube of light, yes. I experience it again. And so that's an example of me helping to my nervous system to believe in the good, all the good, rather than me just waiting for it to react to, PTSD. So we can, whatever we feel and whatever we see, and we really sense it, and not just a far out memory, I mean, a body memory, like it feels warm and my heart burns, and I can feel my, light in my hands, my body feels yummy. All of those are things that help me to anchor that experience and to be able to recreate it and reapply it into different areas of my life. So those are all foundational for healing.
Yes. You've mentioned that word, that kind of embodiment piece, and you're talking about, as you said, really feeling the thing and not just kind of it being a thought that's in your mind. I guess that this kind of will go in to talk about the work that you do, but tell us about, why is this important? What is embodiment? Why is it important? Why should people, I guess, care about it and actually put it into practice, and for it to become a practice? And how has that kind of impacted your own healing journey?
Yeah, so to heal, I also had to think about that time when I felt the most one. There's a like a cosmic interval. It's almost like the space in between the notes and music, or it's what we see when we see a beautiful sunset, when we look into somebody's eyes that we love, that moment where there's no time or space, you just get a little. So think of that space. And I got that a lot with my horse Haas. He was an Irish warm blood from Ireland here in Montana. And when we did dressage together, there were moments where we crossed the barrier between two species and we were one. And so it's also that type of connection that we get when we're talking heart to heart. And so from that place of connection, I remember I promised God I would heal. So yes. I had to come up with my own way, because I think all of us do. And for me, I thought, well, that's the oneness. I think I have to be able to embody that feeling, that sense, that pause, that interval of wholeness and connection. But it is also makes me pregnant, ready to receive the next moment in time. So it's a crossover from the past to the future, but I really don't know what's going to happen. But I'm just kind of there. I'm in connection. And in my mind, I had to love myself like I did my horses, because I loved them more than anything. I also knew from my connection to the divine that love was, for me, love is a path. So I had to learn how to embody that and to feel it for myself. And so I was aware that I think we have 4 main containers of the energy that we identify as us and our identity as we were created by God. And so there's the spiritual body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body. And for us to be whole, we have to be pretty even between all of them. I mean, if something's out of whack in the spiritual body and we don't address it, it will end up probably manifesting in the physical body, and vice versa. I mean, they're not hierarchical, but they will go back and forth. The energy, if it gets stuck, will affect the other one. And the horses aren't like a 4-horse hitch, like 2 in front and 2 in back. It's a 4-horse hitch across the front. They all have to be pulling together for us to be in harmony for healing. And then it comes to the embodiment part. So we think of those as containers of the energy that we have been given for this life. In our hearts, we each have a 3-fold flame. And in that flame is the power, love, and wisdom. And those have to be in balance and in harmony for the light to come in. And then it goes, then we embody those 4 bodies. So it's not just our physical body, but I used to not really want a physical body, because remember, I didn't like it here. And actually there was a part of me that was extremely arrogant, because I was like, God, why am I here? And all I want to use my body for is to move my head from my pillow to my desk. It's no wonder my body got sick, right?
Yeah, so
and
neglected.
Now, yeah, very much so. I was so hard on it. And I went from there to, after I came back, and I've been doing this healing and this ongoing unfolding of this amazing journey. I mean, I never imagined I could be as happy and have as much joy in me as I feel most days now. And I realized that I had been extremely arrogant, and that the body is extremely important for healing. I mean, why would we be given one? I mean, we can do a certain amount of healing mentally and emotionally, but if you've ever done any of that work, it's amorphous. It's like quicksilver. Our thoughts and our feelings just kind of roll all over the place. When they're anchored in the body, we find a truth. And so the type of work I do now, and the horses help with, because think about it, you're looking at kind of doing some introspection and feeling and experiencing things, and you have a 1,200-pound horse next to you that's holding space for you and literally embodying almost a divine impersonal love that flows through, and that helps us get anchored in our bodies. And to truly heal, the body, we need to be congruent and fully in our body, and take advantage of the honesty that it gives us. I also believe that when more of us embody love, light, and our divine identity, that is the first and foremost way that we will change the world around us. Without that, we're fodder for polarity. I mean, you can think about how the different political parties, it's like, oh yeah, I believe that, I don't believe this. It's black and white. You're this, I'm that. You're this religion, I'm here. All of a sudden, all we are is all these parts inside us and outside of us are polarized. And when we find wholeness and embody it, we become the anchor and the platform for that to be what we experience in the world. And that's the way to transform first ourselves, but then the world around us.
I absolutely love that. It's definitely all about everything should be from the inside out, shouldn't it? That is the thing. Absolutely love it. And so in terms of, I guess, the work that you're doing with your clients today, then, what sorts of things are they coming to you with? Because I'm thinking, if someone hears, okay, you're an equine gestalt coach, who comes to you? And, how do I know that I can come to you and you can help me with whatever my trauma or whatever it might be is?
Yeah, so my first retreat was for 5 women who had lost someone to suicide, 3 of them their children. And they called it life-changing, and that it freed them up to let go of the shame and the pain that they'd been carrying. Obviously you never lose that pain, but they were able to go forward in their life and live more fully present and with love. I have another woman who been a pastor for 35 years, and her husband was also a pastor, and she lost him unexpectedly.
Right.
And so I helped her release the grief. And so sometimes we have the horses and the way I've been trained is very good for people to be able to release grief. Mm-hmm. And sometimes grief is as simple as, every time I change, I go through a deep healing. I almost grieve what I just left. I mean, it's really kind of crazy.
It's so true, isn't it? That is so true. It's like because it's like they say, what is it, like a million deaths, isn't it? That we're kind of dying all the time, because it is. As soon as you move into the new you, or the new version, or the new aspect of you, you have to kind of let go of the old one.
Yes,
it can be really difficult.
Oh, it's ongoing. I mean, you think, woohoo, and then I'm like, well, here I am again. But so the other people who come, I do mother hunger retreats, and so mother hunger is a term that was coined by Kelly McDaniel, and it's about it could be men too, but her focus is mostly on women who, for women who didn't get the nurturance, the wisdom, the training, and the protection that most mothers offer. And so I happen to have complex PTSD for most of my life. I don't think I really have it anymore. So when people tell you can't get rid of PTSD or fibromyalgia, I don't necessarily agree with that based on my lived experience. But it took a lot for me, I had to be willing to go to the places where that scared me most inside of me. It was worth it, but it's been hard. Yeah. So back to, she wrote a book called Mother Hunger. And I work with a woman on the East Coast of United States. And she and I do mother hunger retreats. And we do 1 or 2 a year. And we have one coming up in September. Then I also do just Path to Wholeness retreats. So Path to Wholeness retreats is anybody who thinks that right now there's something that's not quite right. Something's blocking them from living the life they want to live. Mm-hmm. And those, I can work with as simple as I lost my, it's not simple, it's very painful. I'm grieving the loss of my dog, to deep stuff from childhood. In Gestalt, we're trained to believe, and I was trained by Melissa Pierce at Touched by a Horse. She is a horsewoman who is also a psychotherapist, and she had done years of practice, and she started watching how her clients were interacting with the horses. Mm-hmm. And so she's a pioneer in the human horse interaction and how that helps people heal. And so in that practice, we're trained I see my client, whoever comes to work with me, I see him as whole. We're on the same level. And my job is to listen. You know what you need to do. It's just that there's some part of you that can't quite find it, or it scares you, or, there's other things. And so at the time that we're together, I am just walking with you and supporting you on your process of unfolding. And most of the time, 100% of the people who've come to the retreats, I've done 10 over the last 4 or 5 years, have said it's life-changing. Yeah. And so that, I don't know what will come up. And healing is spherical. Mm-hmm. So, I had that early childhood trauma, but that might not be the first thing that has to come up. I may need to talk about my Shetland Little Red and something that was in my heart from when I was 5. So there's layers, and it just kind of gets put on top of each other. And what I think happens is we make decisions about how life is, and it's like lightning strikes come in. And when we get a lightning strike, we decide what that means to us. And we perceive the world after that through our reaction to that lightning strike. And so in some way with Gestalt, I have to listen and help you experience it differently so you can reorganize. And literally most people, when they heal, will actually go through at several layers of a let going of what it was in the past. And so then I, every time I went through a deep healing, I would sometimes say, okay, for the next 21 days, I'm going to be uncomfortable, because what I had over me in the past as a protection, mm-hmm. I've now let go. So I don't know, I haven't yet created the new me. Yes. but it's ongoing. I like to think of it that whenever I let go of something, I believe in angels. So I think of the angels, weaving me back together in that place, so that I'm created back into my divine identity.
I love that. I also believe in angels. What you mentioned there was funny because you said the new you, and as you were saying that, I was thinking it's the identity thing, isn't it? This is how I always think of it. It's like it's so one of the reasons change, certainly for me, is so difficult is because you have this identity. Whatever that identity is, it might not be serving you, it might be painful, it might be awful, it might be so attached to so many things that you don't want to be part of you, but it's your identity, and it's been that way for such a long time for most of us, that the thought of kind of letting parts of these things go, all you can think of is, but go, and then what, and then what, and then who am I, and then who will I be? And I think for a lot of people, it's that question of, because you have to let go before actually the new thing comes in. And I think, unfortunately, there isn't a way to kind of have both things at the same time. You just have to trust.
That's so amazing that you said that, because that was my exact position before my meditation and prayers this morning. I was kind of like, I feel so strange because I know I'm not who I was before.
Yes.
I don't know who I am. And then it changes how I'm in relationship with people. And I'm like, and now I feel awkward because I haven't done this dance in this relationship from who I am now. And it becomes a time where I'm aware that it's really important to have a few close people who see who you're becoming.
Yes.
Because otherwise people will want you to say, hey, you get back here. I knew you like this and I don't really like the change.
That's so true, honestly. And it's a huge thing, because as you said, if you don't have those people who understand or see who you're becoming, even for yourself, it's very easy to kind of slip back or to choose to go back, because it's easier, isn't it? Because it is easier if people are saying, well, hold on a minute, and you want to be comfortable. We want to be comfortable. Those relationships served us in some way at some point. And so it's very easy to kind of slip back, even though it might not be comfortable now, because I think when you do, immediately it's like, this shoe doesn't fit anymore. This doesn't feel right. And you know that it's not really who you are anymore.
Yes. The other day I came up, I think, with a statement that was kind of pithy. It said, I no longer reside in comfortability. My zip code is never ending change and growth.
I love that.
Yeah. And it's true, because to continue to grow is not comfortable. But who promised us, healing's not comfortable? I mean, that's the part of us who wants somebody else to do it. And it just won't happen. We can mask pain. We can mask what's going on inside of us and what wants to come out, and who, the parts of us that want to become whole. We can push all that down and try to manage it, but that's not really living. Oh, and now that I've experienced the other way, and still, almost at least once a day, I will hit a place to say, oh, this is uncomfortable. But with the uncomfortability, think about climbing a mountain. In my mind, our soul becoming whole and growing into who we are is almost like an ongoing climbing of Mount Everest. And so it's an ongoing, I don't think I'll necessarily reach the summit in this life. I think it's an ongoing climb. Because if we reach the summit of who we are, then I think we actually maybe leave this body or something.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we will. Yeah.
I don't know what happens. I haven't gotten there yet. I probably won't be talking to you, but
yeah.
Anyhow, so in this climb, there are times where I do rest for a minute. It's like going to base camp. I've gone through a big change, and now I'm realizing I need a little bit of time to acclimatize. But then the climb starts again, and as I look next at where kind of what's coming up for the interior growth, some of it's exciting, and I manage myself because of the PTSD. I still have a habit of trying to keep myself in the middle. Because everything I felt that would excite me would take me into the PTSD and fear. So I don't want to feel that. So I try to keep myself kind of here. When I was in the depths of my dis-ease, I had no affect. How I'm talking with my hands and stuff. 10 years ago, if you would have interviewed me, I would have said, Yeah, it's been a good day. I would just show no affect because I had to keep everything so managed to try to maintain balance. That's how I maintain balance. And now I'm aware that, yeah, I do stuff on the inside and I do stuff on the outside that kind of scares me. But I also get that point of excitement. I have much more, it's like when somebody plays the master violin in the orchestra, they oftentimes play with great passion. The last one I watched in New York City, she actually danced. She played barefoot on the stage in New York City.
I love that.
Yeah, and she just played with great passion.
Wow.
And then that lifted everybody else up. I mean, the director directed with more passion. The performers after her, who were the featured performer, they performed with more passion. I think that each one of us can live our life like that, but we have to be willing to shed that part of us that wants to keep things managed into, we get more if we risk more. And I'm not talking about crazy risk. I'm talking about wholesome risk. I mean, it's way more exhilarating than, I never did, any type I drank, but and then painkillers. I did not do recreational drugs. So, but I can't imagine that any of them can compare to what happens inside of us when we're feeling the inner light and love, and we're in connection vertically and then with other people. It is a slice, literally what I felt when I was out of my body. It's a slice of heaven on earth.
I love that. One of the words that you've said a few times now is this wholeness, to people feeling whole, living a whole life. And I guess ultimately, that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? We're talking about how can you come to this place where you do feel whole, so that you feel like you're living a life that firstly is fulfilling, you want to live it. And then, finally, should we end up in the position that you were in, hopefully not soon for anybody listening, but when you end up there, because we all will end up at that point at some point, but you feel like, yes, it's been fantastic. I've done all the things and I've been me. I think so many people that you speak to, we're all that thing about kind of that managed piece. When I hear you say that, for me, I think about how we're living to someone else's tune, or to some laws or rules or confines. We can't even necessarily identify some of them, but they're there. And so this management. And so it's, how do we actually break free of that and live whole from inside and be that whole person that I think a lot of us want to be, but it's kind of, how do we do that? And I guess to kind of go back to the kind of healing thing, it's probably a lot of times it's some form of thing that needs to be healed that is suppressing that ability for us to be able to be out there, out and out whole. And it's kind of accepting that and then doing the work.
Well said. Well said. Well said. One of my latest things that I did is I created a masterclass on the touchstones of transformational healing. And that is available on my website, herthalund.com. But what you were starting to talk about is I decided to try to back up what I experienced, and it's a free masterclass. So if people want to go there and look, but but everything else you said is absolutely true. And there is no linear way. It's not like a recipe, 2 scoops of this and 1 of this and turn 3 times and clap.
It would be fantastic if it was, though, wouldn't it? Maybe the journey wouldn't be as fun. The journey wouldn't be as exciting.
Yes and no, exactly. Because everything we get by doing the inner work is ours.
Exactly.
I have a new found way of self-confidence because, it's mine. I've done the work. Another example is I accompanied my husband last week. He was president of the Montana Stock Growers, which is a statewide organization that's really important for ranchers. Right. And in the past, especially when I was going through deep healing, being in a group of people I was so sensitive. I could feel everything. As I was opening up to my feelings, it seemed like I opened it up to everybody's feelings. So I became uncomfortably empathic. Right. And in groups of people, and I didn't drink. In the past, I was a little bit like my mom. I never drank became an alcoholic, but I still would want to, and occasionally drink to be able to buffer how it felt to be in a crowd of people and cover my inadequacy. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't do that. So I'm like, what am I, but this time I didn't have any of that. I mean, I went and I sat with all the people and I was like, I'm just happy to be here. And, they had these silly games that they played. I played the games. I was like, look at me. I just didn't have the same stuff holding me back, and it came from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved sitting there. And at one time, I was just listening, and I'm practicing kind of keeping my body in alignment, because if I hold myself correctly, it's almost like I can feel the light and love moving in my body better. So when I fall into habits of, I naturally kind of go. And so I was sitting there practicing and all of a sudden I just kind of felt, it's like, wow, I don't usually feel this connected and this zen, this at one in my meditation. So I did that in the group of people. So that was a totally different experience. And I wasn't trying to, march to anybody else's drummer. And in fact, the leadership of that organization wasn't happy with me because I'm a lobbyist, and they were backing legislation that I disagree with would be bad for the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to engage to help kill it. So, and so some people weren't happy with me. Some people have known me for 50 years because I have old friends that go there. So all those different parts, and I was just like happy to be me. Wah.
Wow.
It was a brand new experience.
That is amazing. I feel like I should have started with this, because what we're talking about, everything that we've talked about, if anyone's wondering, why is all of this important, Hertha? Why should we go through this difficult, what you call it, the work? Why should we go through this work and this healing journey? What's the purpose of it? Because it sounds so challenging and it sounds like it's never ending. Life's hard enough. We've got plenty of other things that we need to be doing. But what you've talked about there is confidence. If you want to actually have that deep inner confidence that is kind of unwavering, regardless of, as you say, the challenges and the disagreements and all of the things that are going on, you can be confident in whatever it is that you believe and think and want to say and all of those things. And then also, the wholeness, actually being able to be happy without some external thing. That's the thing. And I think, for so many of us, I think particularly if you are an introvert or if you have kind of that social anxiety, it's kind of going out, you think, we call it Dutch courage, isn't it? Let's have some drinks or have this. And I'm not knocking it. I do like a glass of wine. But the thing is, it's that thing about, it would also be fantastic. And I'd also love to be like, actually, I don't need it. I feel amazing with nothing. And that's the thing, isn't it? I think a lot of people would absolutely want to have that feeling, certainly the confidence.
Recently, I went to a dinner in New York City with other women. And for me, I grew up more around men. And I grew outside. So it's almost a little bit more natural for me, and lawyers, so we're women that kind of feel a little bit like, what's going to happen here? And I went to this dinner and I felt into it, and everybody else was ordering a drink. And I'm like, no, I don't want a drink. I feel so good. Yes. And I want to connect with these women. I don't want anything. Not only do I not want to damper how I feel to be protected, I don't want anything to damper how good I feel and my ability to connect with them. So it was exactly the opposite from the inside out. So those are the benefits from doing the work. And it makes living here and living my same life a very different experience. Mm-hmm. And again, I experience joy and, peace and deep equanimity inside, in a daily basis, even in my professional role. So there's no split between Hertha, the devotional practice, Hertha the coach, or Hertha the attorney. In court, I have to be a little bit careful because I can get on the muscle and be a little aggressive. so
the attorney comes out.
Yeah. So that one I have to kind of say, I did practice. I had my last hearing. I chose to take the high road and, do my work to protect my client, but not to get in there was a part of me that used to like to get in the mud and fight.
Right.
And now I'm like, nope, I didn't. And it actually worked. I had to, I was a little bit hesitant to see it. It worked better. And I was happier with myself. Yes. And it also helped the whole room, It's like now I'm part of the solution, even if I have to take a hard line.
Yeah, I love that. And everything we've talked about so far, I think, and I hope, and I'm sure everybody who's listening will see just how powerful and important doing this work is, and kind of working through those challenges and going through that healing for all the things we've just mentioned. And obviously those things are connected with everything in life. The more confident you feel, the happier you feel, the better your self-esteem, the better you feel within yourself, that's going to kind of flow out to your relationships, your career, your business, whatever it might be. And ultimately you will just live, as you've talked about, that kind of more whole life, and ultimately be happier. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Hertha. So far, you've given us gold. You've talked about obviously how you help people and the kind of clients and what they come to you with and the sorts of people you're able to help. It sounds to me like it's anybody with anything, quite frankly. It sounds like if you are in any place, in any way, shape or form, where you're feeling like things aren't quite right, you're stuck, you're blocked, or you've got some serious, you talked about PTSD or kind of trauma to work through, then get in touch or get into one of these retreats. By the sounds of it, it sounds like that's what they definitely need to do. So tell us how people can get in contact. Where can they find you? And you mentioned the retreat coming up in September. How regularly kind of these retreats come about?
Yeah, so to get in contact with me is herthalund.com, and Hertha is Hertha. Last name is Lund, Lund.com, and Hertha means Mother Earth in German. My grandmother, her parents immigrated to America from Germany. So anyhow, I love when people come to our ranch and you get to experience my horses. I call them my healing horse friends. I love my horses, and you will too. They're amazing. Let me tell you their names. Mystic is the one she's a big mare. She's 1,700 pounds and 16 hands, so about 5 foot at the withers. And she is the anchor of my coaching. She's very, very, very good coach. And she's a little bit hard on people. I mean, if you're not congruent, she won't be mean to you, but she won't move. She will help you see where you're out of alignment and kind of demand that you level up. She's like, if you can't do it for yourself, I'll help you here gently, as a 1,700 pound horse. And the other mare that I have is Mystic is my horse in my consciousness that came to me and is like the physical body. Mm-hmm. And then Ruby is the other mare that I have, and she's a bay mare. She is the smallest of them, and she is very, very sweet. She was my ranch horse for many years. We've covered lots of miles and done lots of work together. And she is extremely supportive. She's very good. I've seen her help women in grief pieces, but I coached a man for a while who had an alcohol problem and was suicidal. And I saw her touch his heart and help him. He's healthy today. So, she's very courageous, but very, very loving. Mm-hmm. And then I have Monk, who is a smaller horse. He's only 14.1, which makes him the shortest of them. Well, I guess he's a little bit shorter than Ruby. I said that wrong. And Monk is like the Fabio of the horse world. He's gorgeous. He's got his mane is about 2 feet long. It's all white and it's thick. And he's just beautiful. And he is the spiritual body horse. He's very forward, very kind. He'll do anything for me. He loves me. And when people coach with him, he talks to them. And even though they're not horse people, they can hear him talking to them, and he coaches them and helps them, interiorly to see what they need to look at. And then the next horse is Merlin. He is a big, tall, standard bred gypsy. So he's 16 hands, again, a little bit taller than Mystic at the withers. He's beautiful, black and white and brown paint it means mix of colors like a splash all over. Mm-hmm. And he is a magnificent coach. I saw one woman come who had she took in a lot of shame and negative self-talk from her mom, and she had let it go, and she went into the ring with Merlin, and Merlin was just stood behind her gently, and she could see her processing and kind of letting go and going through this interior process of sorting. And I said, has anybody else ever had your back like Merlin? And she kind of smiles and she said, no. And as soon as she opened up, he wrapped his head around her and hugged her. And that was like what put the seal on her finishing her piece of work. She has Merlin hugging her, and this big horse holding space, but also wrapping her up to provide her support. Now, some of the horses will actually nose you and find where things are out of alignment in your body. Mystic, one woman wanted to go meet her, and Mystic kept on putting her nose here. And I said, I said, are you aware of something in your body, in your chest? She said, yeah, I had a double mastectomy. And so Mystic, could tell that and was just nosing. And they almost like want to try to help bring the energy back into harmony. And so then I also have Sage. Sage is Palomino. So it's like a blonde. And he's almost like Hollywood. He's gorgeous. He's the most extroverted of all the horses. But I did a piece of work with a woman who's 78 and has been on a deeply spiritual path all of her life, but she just had a few things that were kind of blocking where she's trying to get. And note that none of us know how long we have. So there's a certain amount of things we want to get done while we're here and have a body. And we have enough ramp up time for when we leave that we're in the right place to where we need to go next. Anyhow, I had Sage work with her and he was amazing. He came in close and, held space with her, nuzzled her. But then at one point he went and laid down, and all of it meant something to her. It was like he was in connection in this divine dance with her as she was working through her stuff. And then the last horse is Nighthawk. Nighthawk is all black, and he coached me the other day. He hasn't coached an outside person. He hasn't partnered with me yet, but I had been working on something really, really deep, and I went out to check on the horses, mostly because I needed my horse friends. And he came up to me out in the pasture. So it's this huge pasture, but he walks up to me and he starts licking and nuzzling my hands. Our hands are an extension of our heart chakra. And so exactly what I was working on was trying to, let go of stuff to open up my heart. And so he was pretty insistent on, pulling and getting the love moving through my hands. And he stayed with it. And then horses will also, it looks like they're yawning, but they're not yawning. It's leeching. They're actually, when they feel that we're really in a space of where we can receive, they'll actually come in, and their leeching is trying to move that energy. So they're actually almost, people talk about Reiki and stuff. Horses know way more about Reiki than we can as humans. Anyhow, so those are the horses. So you come to the ranch, you get to be with the horses, and I have the Gestalt training, but we're also in this beautiful place in Montana that you're nestled high up in the mountains, but it's fairly open, but there's mountain ranges all around us. And so it's nestled I call it in the bosom of Mother Earth, for your healing journey. And so that's what we have. My husband built me a retreat center. It is a beautiful place. That's where we have the retreats. I have a chef come to take care of people. Everybody stays here on the property. We provide all the food. And so from Thursday afternoon until Sunday at noon, you get to be immersed in, love, goodness, Mother Earth, the horses, and your own process to find healing. And my retreat in September, we have a Mother Hunger retreat, and there's a resources page on my website that will take you to that. And then also later in September, the last weekend of September, I think it's the 25th to the 28th, we have a Wholeness, Path to Wholeness. I do expect those will be full soon. So if anybody's interested, they should, go to the website and fill out the form. And then as soon as those fill up, I will start a waiting list for next year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Your horses have beautiful names. I love the names. They're lovely, really lovely. And also the piece about the heart chakra, I did not know that. I knew about the chakras, but I didn't know your hands were an extension of your heart. So still giving us lessons even until the end. I guess my final question to you is, would you like our listeners to go away with? If there's kind of one piece of advice or one piece of insight that you really hope people take away from our conversation today, what would that be?
My main piece of advice is, don't wait until you're up there and wanting to come back. I mean, I was very fortunate that I got to come back, and I would have been loved, and I would have been, accepted, and I would have been in a very good place, but I wouldn't have finished my reason for being. We all came here for something that we're supposed to do. We're not all meant to be, king, president, pope, all of those things, but we do have something special that we're meant to do, and the people that we're meant to love, and the people we're meant to serve. But to do that, the first and foremost for all of us is to manifest our own wholeness. I mean, there is nothing more important as a primary assignment for our life than to utilize all that we have around us and life has given us to heal ourselves, to manifest wholeness. And from there, each one of us, will go out and it would be part of the revolution for wholeness. My mission now is to spark a revolution for wholeness, one heart at a time. And that's the way we will change the outer world into the place we dream of. And I really believe it's possible. I don't know how many of it takes, whether it's 5,000, 10, a million. I don't know. All I do know is though that it is foundational for us to change how we experience life on Earth. So to me, it's even more important than an outer environmental movement, because the outer environment mirrors our inner environment. So first and foremost, we clean up our inner environment, our inner wholeness, and then together we can work together then to solve the outer problems. And all of a sudden, everything has more ease because we're in flow and we're in harmony, and we can have different viewpoints, but we can share them heart to heart. And then it becomes a constructive, uplifting exercise rather than a battle. So that's what I would say is start today. Don't wait till tomorrow. I do one-on-one clients, and I'm happy to work with anybody who feels like they're in their heart, they want to work with me. And you have what you need where you are. Each one of us can attract to us. We each have our ability to have our connection to source and to learn from that and to find wholeness. I mean, we could be alone on a mountaintop and it would be a little bit harder because it does help to have other people help us on the path, but we could still do it. So that's what I want you to know, is that we're not handicapped because of where we live or what there is. You can find, if you listen to this inner treasure, it's like an inner treasure hunt for wholeness. Each day you'll be given the next part, but you remember, you got to start and you got to move, you got to act. Otherwise, you won't be in the right time at the right place and you won't be able to build on it. So it really is like, for me, it's like every day it's a child. It's like, what's going to happen today? And sometimes it scares me. And sometimes I have all those other parts that get up and talk, but I'm like, in itself, it makes life way more beautiful than anything I could have tried to manage or make happen.
I love that. Thank you so much. And such a wonderful, wonderful message for everybody to take away. And yeah, an action point, really, not just a message, but it's something that we can all go away and start kind of putting into practice today, which is get started, and definitely don't wait until you're wishing that you were back and had that opportunity. Thank you so much, Hertha. It's been so fantastic to talk to you, and I really, really appreciate your time. And I know our listeners are going to absolutely love hearing this interview and kind of learning everything that you've shared today.
Well, I have loved our time together. Thank you.
Wow. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I definitely enjoyed talking to Hertha. So interesting. And I think the key takeaway from this episode, certainly for me, is that no matter what you've gone through, however challenging, there is hope, and recovery and healing is possible. So definitely go out and get yourself a copy of Hertha's book. Remember, it's out on the 15th of July. The title of that book, again, is Alchemy of Resilience, My Rugged Path to Wholeness. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I look forward to sharing more amazing interviews, more fantastic guests. But for now, I hope you have a fantastic week. Take care, and bye-bye for now.